Hey guys, we got a great show for you on the podcast today. I am talking with health and performance coach Michael Allison. Michael is also a health and resiliency coach. Michael, well, he's pretty much an expert in the polyvagal theory. He uses a polyvagal-informed approach to helping people optimize their performance, not just in sport but in life. Super fantastic conversation. I learned so much talking with Michael, and you can just hear and feel his passion coming through as he talks. I really think you're going to get a lot out of this show. So pull up a chair, buckle up, and maybe take some notes. Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength Podcast. Are you ready to start?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. We'll just jump right in. And how about what is the play zone?
What is the play zone? It's a great question. It's my application of polyvagal theory, which was the study of how our neurophysiology is really an intervening variable to how we experience the world, which was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. And so I took his body of work and I specifically applied it to optimizing our health and our wellness and ultimately our performance. And performance isn't necessarily just performing in our craft or on a stage. It's really, to me, it's resilience. It's being able to live in alignment with our intentions and our values and our goals and really relate to those we really care about in ways that we really want to show up. And then when we get sort of kicked off, we can come back. So that it's really a life performance, not just performance on our stage, whatever that may be. So that's what the play zone is. The play zone is just the phrase that I use to describe sort of living more often than not in the play zone, in a state that neurophysiologically means that we have enough safety, internal safety. The way that we're actually regulating our physiology is what would technically be considered vagally controlled, ventral vagal control, while we're engaged, while we're actually energetic and exuberant and playful, right? In relationships or in our work, just in our life. So that's why I call it the play zone, because it's really a blended state, a blend of this ventral vagal safety with some mobilized energy.
So can you speak a little bit more for everyone listening, like the polyvagal theory?
Sure. What is it?
What is it?
Well, it's a huge body of work, again, by Dr. Porges. But the simple way to look at it, the way I look at it, is it's really a map. So it's a map that explains how our bodies, our nervous systems, subconsciously, adaptively, reflexively respond to the environment. That's the external environment, all of the sensory information coming at us at any moment, sights and smells and sounds and tastes and touch. But it's also the relational information, right? So it's the exchange of our voice and our gestures, our movements of our hands and our neck and our head, right? It's all of that. And it's also our internal feedback we're getting subconsciously from our organs, from our systems. And it's taking all of this information and our body is reflexively reacting to that. And broadly defined, we have cues that would be considered safe and comforting and connecting. And that shifts our physiology into a state where we can actually relate to others, where we can actually tap into our craft, tap into our curiosity, tap into the really fruits of life, of being a human. But there's also features that are uncertain, that are risky, that are dangerous. And that shifts our physiology to more threat and to be biased to see the world as more threatening, as more dangerous, or to interact with others in a way that can also be more warning versus warmth. Are you following me? So like if my subconscious nervous system, the technical word for that is neuroception. It's beneath perception. It's actually happening before I can perceive what's actually going on. Okay, so it's a reflex. And it will respond to these features internally, external, and relationally, and then trigger these physiological shifts. Well, what does that mean? Triggers changes in heart rate and breathing and muscle tension, changes the way my voice would sound. It actually changes the neural regulation of my larynx and pharynx, changes the neural regulation of our middle ear muscles so that we can actually either extract more of the background sound if we're under threat, or if we're in a more of a safe physiological state, we actually connect to the human voice better. So it's doing all of these things subconsciously and like immediately, but that influences how we interact in the world. It influences how we relate to our own experience in the world. And it's either enabling us to really broadcast and share warmth and welcome and friendliness and love and care, or with not matching our intentions, we might be broadcasting, I'm in danger, or you should be in danger because I'm tense, right? And so that's what polyvagal theory is. It's a map that helps me and those that I work with to really understand how these moment-to-moment changes can impact everything and can bias us for better or for worse.
So is it a map that plays inside of the autonomic nervous system, or one that, like, I guess, yeah, does it influence? Obviously, it seems like it very much influences the autonomic nervous system.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's changing. Technically, what's happening is it's changing the autonomic regulation of all of our organs, of all of our bodily systems. And it's either supporting what is called homeostasis, which is supporting our health, our recovery, right? Or even how we want to relate to others and our growth and all of that. Or that's only when the physiology is autonomically being regulated in a way that is this state of safety. Okay. Or if it's feeling under threat, again, subconsciously, if we're detecting all of these cues and shifting into a threat physiology, it's actually interrupting. We're actually autonomically interrupting, optimizing our health and our growth and our recovery and relating to others. And it's putting resources towards defending, protecting, right? Or
Right.
even if it's been going on for too long, if we've been living a life sort of locked in this defensive, protective, mobilized zone, we only have so much resource. So then what happens is the body will reflexively begin to conserve and preserve what's left. And that's that more shutting down or detached or numbing. And it might even be full collapse, or we might see organ failure. We might see disease. That's the pathway if we don't sort of help ourselves and each other find more time to connect, find more space to actually come into homeostasis.
How do you use the map of the polyvagal theory to improve resilience?
Great. So first, it's awareness. So it's awareness in ourselves of where we might be on the map, right? So right here, right now with you, and we're engaged in a nice conversation, and you're sending me really nice cues of interest. So I feel relatively safe. I feel at ease. I feel connected to you, and I feel connected to my space. So that tells me I'm in a pretty good place, right? And that's a body that now is actually supporting my health. Whereas if I notice that I'm getting a little tense, or if while we're speaking, I notice that my voice either gets locked higher or gets more monotone, that's a cue back to me that I go, oh, my body's mobilizing and I'm feeling a little bit under threat, right? And so then I know from there some resources I can use to help myself come back into that first place where I mentioned that sense of safety. Or if I notice that I'm sort of detaching or numbing out, or actually really almost sort of folding in, then that tells me I'm actually beginning to immobilize. My body, for whatever reason, is feeling a little overwhelmed. So now I might actually need to mobilize a little bit and actually get a little energy going, and then try to reconnect with you and my own body here to come back into that first safe zone, what I call the safe space. So it's a map for awareness, first and foremost.
Okay. And it sounds like the map can be broad, like you can be so much information that you're way too scared or unsafe to perform really well. Extreme fight or flight, where things just everything falls apart. But also, can you be so safe that you're on the other end where you just kind of too chill?
Not necessarily so safe. That's a different experience. If you can be so safe and meditative and sitting there in this environment that has very little stimulation at you, but you're still alert, you're still present. And that obviously isn't the play zone, but that's still grounded in safety. And that would support homeostasis. Whereas what you described, where you're actually detaching or really lethargic, where you're actually losing alertness or numbing, that's more of that shutting down. And it could be not out of fear. It could be not that there's threat, but it could be that you've been exhausting your resources for too long.
Okay.
And it's the body making an attempt to recover.
So it sounds like a lot of the map is really based off of information, external information, internal information, all areas of information. Have you come across people that their biggest source of unsafe information is their own thoughts, their own mind?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But the way it's a little bit tricky. So often the thoughts are actually emerging out of the physiology.
Okay.
So the physiology has shifted first, or the physiology has been retuned to actually be grounded in some state of defense, whether it's always mobilized and always busy, or always what we call anxious, right, and unsettled. And then the thought arises out of that, of like, oh, if I could just get this done, then I'll calm down. Or this is why, it's because of this. And then you start spinning these thoughts, or gosh, I just can't get everything done, or I'm just not good enough. How, am I ever going to be able to, whatever the story is, comes out of the physiology and then creates a loop, which reinforces the physiology.
So everything's connected.
So it's all connected. Yeah, there is no separation. It's one interconnected feedback loop. And so the map is that awareness piece. And then the tools or the resources or the strategies are ways to interrupt that loop. And some of those strategies could be changing, not necessarily changing a thought, but looking at the thought as just information, as just a reflection of where my physiology might be. Are you following me? So like if I'm having spiraling, destructive, self-destructive stories, instead of focusing on changing the story, I'll realize I have that self-destructive story, which tells me that my physiology, whether it started in my physiology or started in the story, I don't care, but I'm in a loop. It just tells me that I'm going to address my physiology. My physiology, for whatever reason or reasons, is spiraling in a defensive, mobilized threat physiology. And so I'm going to use what I can, whether it's just walking out in nature, whether it's listening to pleasant music, whether it's connecting with you, if I'm in a relationship, and looking at what I can get to help my body, my physiology, my nervous system to settle down, and temporarily just redefine the narrative as my body is just mobilized. The story isn't necessarily true. right? So anytime that the way I kind of coach it is when we notice self-destructive stories, when we noticed hurtful or stories of I don't like him or her, or I don't like this, or I can never do this, any of those kinds of stories, those to me are just information that my physiology right now is under threat. And so how can I help myself find more safety and comfort and connection in my body? And then see what narrative arises.
That's awesome.
It's just a different approach.
It's very well, I'm sure I'm sure you're aware there's probably similarities. It sounds like Zen Buddhism, or
Yeah.
I mean, it's very neat, especially as you lay it all out.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that they had, whether or not you believe in Buddhism or follow that's not, but I think there was a connection with the physiology in that interpretation. That's what it is. And that, to me too, that sense of just being with, that's that awareness. Just be with. I use a different phrase. I say, meet the body where it is. Just meet the body where it is, without evaluation, without judgment. It's not right. It's not wrong. Right. And that's the same with the story. Just meet the story where it is. And to me, it's information of where the body is, because regardless, again, where it starts, the brainstem is what's regulating the physiology. Right. So I like to look at it as like a funnel or an inverted triangle. And the brainstem is the base. And it has information coming from the body up. And it has those stories and associations like you were talking about coming down. But they meet in the brainstem. And the brainstem, 80% of the fibers coming into the brainstem are sensory from the body. So the body can be really powerful in shifting the regulatory centers in the brainstem to enable a new story. So that's why I go more into the body. That doesn't mean that top-down strategies aren't effective. They are. It's just been my own experience, and with performers in particular, that when they get in a loop and get really, really either anxious or afraid, or even that wanting to get off the stage and get out or collapsing, to interrupt that, it takes more than a top down. It takes more than a new thought. It takes more than an image, often. And so it's helpful to know body strategies like breathing, like postural control, like how to move your body, that kind of stuff.
I have learned in what I do, it is often easier to approach the mind from the body than trying to approach the mind from the mind.
Yes. Yeah. And what you're saying is that you're addressing the body and you're trying to care for, right? That's what self-care is to me. Mm-hmm. We're trying to care for the bodily reactions to all the stuff coming at it first. And we're basically trying to bring that body into a state of ease and connection and calm, whatever you want to call it, groundedness, which will then allow the mind to emerge. That's more quiet. That's more steadiness of mind. That allows us to put things in there more deliberately, or to explore and be curious and expand what we can even think. Because once we're locked in at the level of the brainstem, once we're locked into a threat response, it limits what's possible. Yeah, it limits what's possible, right? So why not? I love that. Let's start in the body to get to the mind. And then in the end, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to get them aligned. We're trying to get it all in this state of homeostasis or sociostasis. Some people refer it to sociostasis because that's when we can actually relate to each other and connect. Because connection is that we both are bringing our physiology into that place together. Subconsciously.
And that there's a feeling to that as well. Like connection, there's an energy to it.
Absolutely.
Like it actually lifts you and it
totally
engages you and excites you.
You got it. That's the play zone. That's the play zone. So that's the ultimate quest even in a competition, that's the transformative moment when you can be going up against somebody. Maybe money's on the line, maybe ranking, status, maybe any of that is on the line, right? But instead of looking at your opponent as an enemy, as a threat, you actually in your body feel them as an opportunity to elevate into your highest level, which is what you're saying. So it becomes a co-regulatory relationship, even though they may want to just knock you out.
Right.
Right. But that's what you see, like when you see the greatest champions, you see them, and it doesn't matter what the sport is, right? Like they're not putting the game face on. Like the way we describe the game face, what's the game face to you? Or like, right? It's intense. That's not what I'm getting at. That's a lower level. That's a higher level. I call it the performance hierarchy. That game face where you're intense and what I call fight, where the jaw's tight, the eyes are constricted, and you're really deliberately moving toward one intention or one goal or overpowering your opponent. That's fight. And that's more effective than just being scattered and playing defense and reacting. But they're both grounded in unsafety. They're both grounded in a physiology that's a little under threat. Right. And so the game face to me, when you actually get into the play zone, is relaxed. It's relaxed. And yet you can be engaged, you can be offensive, but it's not grounded in protection. It's not grounded in not feeling like you're enough. Right. It's not needing to get something. It's aspiring to elevate, which to me is the quest. That's the dream, right? And then that way you're surrounding yourself, even in a competitive environment, all about elevating, all about lifting each other up, which is what we see. Like, are you a tennis fan?
I am.
Yeah. So did you see when Roger Federer retired and he had them all come, he did it at the team event, right? And did you see how he and Nadal, the two biggest rivals in the game of tennis, were holding hands at one point and crying together?
It's respect. I mean, that is that connection, right?
That's that connection. And underneath all of that competition is the biological need to feel safe, to feel connected to yourself and to others, and essentially to belong. And in that moment, you could see that they felt completely safe. They felt truly connected to one another. And in that, they felt like they both belonged there, and they belonged in that moment, and they belonged with each other, and they belonged on that stage. And that was the example of what can be underneath competition. From two of the greatest champions who they would call the greatest warriors of all time. They always battled, but no, underneath, they just wanted the same things that you want and I want: to belong, right? To connect. So
you mentioned the quest, and on your website, and this to me is so big, right? So, but on your website, it looks like it is more focused on athletes, performers, and professionals in some type of competitive or showy way, right? But really, this is for
everyone.
Anybody that has a body that wants a better life.
Yeah, exactly. And even for those competitors, and so I do a lot of coaching of coaches, and mostly not sports coaches, executive coaches, life coaches, health coaches, trainers, body workers, psychologists, any type of quote coach, any profession where you're doing work to help your client or your team get what they want, right? But it's all the same quest. It's all the same quest. And the quest is to find the ways to help the body come back into safety, come back into connection. And then to deliberately challenge the body to build resilience. Because it isn't just what you said about like sitting there in the meadow with just the lake going by and the trees. That isn't real life, right?
Only
So
if you
it's
live by
not,
the meadow.
but you can create those spaces, right? So, and that's part of life, and that's part of the life that we love. But in reality, there's also challenge. There are challenges, and there's uncertainties, and there's things that happen that are completely out of our control. But what you said is exactly how I look at it too. In the end, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help ourselves relate to how we're responding to these challenges in a different way. And then that gives us a moment to possibly regain just enough control, enough safety, enough connection to react or respond in ways that align more with who we really want to be, right? Like, we're both parents, and the toughest challenges are with those we love and those we deeply care about, right? And physiologically, why that is because those we deeply care about, when we see them suffering or we see them in pain, right? They're hurting. We have an empathic response, right? We have this empathic response, but what that actually means is our physiology shifts to match where they are. So we actually are hurting with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we care about them, and the more that time that, and as a father, we held them as babies. We've been with them their whole lives. And so to see them and to feel them and to hear them hurting, it triggers that empathic response. And it can be overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But as long as we're in that empathic response, which physiologically means we're hurting too. We're not in our safe zone. We're not in our play zone. We're in some threat response. We actually aren't helping them in the way they need us to help them. They can feel and they can see and they can hear that we're hurting with them. So what we need to do is we need to have, that's what resilience is that we can hurt, but we can come back into that sense of safety, that sense of homeostasis, that sociostasis, so that now we can actually be a quiet witness, a present father who isn't trying to fix or correct, or isn't even trying to join with them to go get whoever hurt them, right? Or whatever. We can just be. And that is what this is all about. So you're exactly right. This isn't about athletes. This isn't even about performance on stage. This is about ultimately becoming a better human, and a human who can act in alignment with who we are and who we really want to be, especially with those we care most about. And as a father, to me, that is the tough challenge. But it's also, I had an experience just the other day. My daughter had a thing with her boyfriend and she was really hurt. And I immediately joined her in that hurt. And it took me, I didn't recover. It took me sleeping on it to actually come into a safe enough state where now I could be compassionate and actually support her and not get angry at the boy, not want to fix anything, but just be with her and let her work through it. And that's what it's all about. You got it. It's not about being an athlete.
So for the person listening, okay, so the last few years,
mm-hmm.
it could be easy to create a story that in the last few years, resiliency has been under attack for almost everybody. And we're on the cusp of, there's always that hope. Well, 2021 is going to be better than 2020. Well, 2022 is going to be better than 2021. Well, here we are knocking on the door of 2023. Do you have any just tips for like how to make a more resilient me in 2023. I just came up with that.
I know it's a resilient me in
Rhyming.
2023, and it's
There
a
you go.
rhyme. No, it's so good because you're spot on. Like what we have been through together collectively, we had to separate our social connection, which is our most important fundamental tool for health and for resilience, for sure. Safe and trusting relationships. And we had to sort of separate because of the risk of getting ill, right? And so that was a true test of our resilience. And then we had the political split, and we had the vaccine, and we had those. So we've been divided for sure. And so, but can we come back together? Absolutely. But we have to, the way I see it is we have to first see what's really there. And what's really there is we're living in a culture that, from what I'm teaching, from this body's perspective, is very challenging. It's ongoing competition. There's evaluation from the time we go to school to wherever we work, right? And there's competition. There's uncertainty. There's lack of familiarity, violations of expectancy. All of those things are real, and they challenge our body to find that sitting by the lake experience. They absolutely do. So what do? First, we just acknowledge that it's real. And hopefully we can see ourselves and each other because of what we're facing, and knowing that our bodies reflexively respond to challenge in those different ways that we've talked about. So we can look at ourselves and each other without shame, without blame, without faults and guilt, right? Those other things that we're attaching. And we can just see it for what it is, and then meet our own bodies where they are. So as we meet our own bodies where they are, then start, I call it building the habit of safety. The habit of safety. Instead of in 2023, I'm just winging this now too. This is great that you brought this up. So instead of we set these resolutions of making a new habit or breaking, I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to do this. Instead of thinking of stopping anything, like I'm no longer going to do this, let's create a habit of safety where all we're going to do is add in those people, those places, those times in the day or the week or the season that feed and nourish our bodies and our nervous systems to feel grounded and safe and connected. So let's make that our 2023 resolution. The habit of safety. Every day, I'm going to find the who, what, when, and where. Who are those people that just, I feel so trusting, or that lift my spirit, that I can play with, or that I just know they get me. Okay. And spend a minute, 5 minutes every day or a couple times a week with that who. When are the times of the day or the week or the season where I just naturally feel more at ease, more connected, right? Maybe it's the morning as the sun rises. Maybe it's the setting sun. Maybe it's just midday and you look up at a cloud. And then where are those places? Could be a place in your home, could be even a place at work or outside. Where, so who, what, where, or who, when, and where, and then what? What are those small little things that we can do that just feed us? Whether it's taking a long, slow exhale, whether it's standing and just sort of reaching up and opening up, whether it's walking, right? So it has to be real simple, but it's who, what, when, and where, and having that as the habit of safety. And secondarily to that is wherever you go. So when you walk into a strange environment or even a normal environment, let your attention sort of wander around the space and see what you can see, or listen for what you can hear, or smell what you can smell, or touch what you can touch, that you, again, not cognitively, but in your body, feels like it's comforting, right? So like when I walk into a room or a restaurant, I sort of let my attention sort of scan. It's part of my habit of safety. And I sort of find where in the room just feels right, feels more at ease. And like, what sounds can I hear that, like, I was playing tennis the other day and I noticed that I was starting to get a little triggered. The other player was taking it to me for a little bit, and I noticed, and I just listened, and I could hear some birds tweeting off in the distance. I'm like, cue of safety. Come back in, right? Instead of spinning into a story of self-destruction or you're not good enough. So it's those kinds of things. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It doesn't have to be this magic, this is what's going to change. Because the body, the nervous system, you need patience, you need kindness. And it's about self-care over the long haul. Yeah, that was a great question.
That's beautiful.
I love that.
The answer was great. And just for the listeners, the habit of safety, which is basically plugging into whatever it is that feeds you, nourishes you.
Whatever it is that feeds you. And those are people, places, things that you do, just certain times, and letting your attention, which is different than thinking, right? Attention is different than thinking. It's just, what can you pay attention to? Your nervous system is bringing all that in, whether or not you're paying attention, whether or not it is, but you can pay attention to certain cues and features that will help emphasize that feature for your body. Yeah.
So Michael, if someone's listening, and there are a lot of professionals that actually listen to this, that work with patients, clients, and artists, where can they go to learn more about the Plays-On, to learn more about you, your courses, your teachings?
Great. So you can go to my website, which is just theplayzone.com. But I have partnered with the Polyvagal Institute, with Dr. Stephen Porges, who created the theory called Polyvagal Theory. And so I have a number of courses that I do in partnership with him, with that organization. And I have an introductory course that is a 4-hour course where you learn the Play-Zone application of Polyvagal Theory, specific to resilience and performance, like we kind of talked about, where you learn key strategies, different lifestyle habits, how to interact in relationships to help nourish the body back into more safety and build some resilience. And then I have a much deeper dive course it's a Polyvagal-informed certificate for health and wellness and performance coaches. And that course it's about 30 hours of work. I partner you up with an already certificated coach mentor, who is in your discipline. So in that course, there's all different disciplines, and it's mostly international. It's amazing how many international students. I've had about 80 already go through, and I have about 25 that are mentors now. So I start new cohorts that run for 8 weeks. The next cohort starts in February, first week of February. But most of the students or coaches continue on. So we're building this really tight community that are all somewhat related to wellness, health, performance, like you're talking about, any type of coaching. Because in order for us to do and to help and to really help whatever it is we're trying to share land in our client, it's how we show up first. As you know, it's how we, just like when we want to dad the way that we'd really like to be the dad, it's how we walk into the room. It's how we show up. It's the same thing. So I'm ultimately teaching you in this course how to show up, how you'd like to really show up, but grounded in the science, grounded in the physiology. It's not made up. I've taken all of the core principles of polyvagal theory and embedded them in a methodology for coaching. That's what it's for.
Awesome. Before I let you go, Do you like peanut butter?
I prefer almond butter.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But I
So
do,
it's
but I
it is
do
a nut
like peanut butter. I do.
Okay, so almond butter, do you creamy or crunchy?
Crunchy.
And what's your favorite brand?
Oh, I just get the kind that has nothing else in it, just pure ground almonds. Like you go to the store and you just hit the button.
I am like the Whole Foods version.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know I ask almost everybody that's ever on the show about peanut butter and nut butter.
Great.
So it's all good. Hey, Michael, this has been so awesome, so much fun. I really appreciate sharing your time and your passion with us.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Now get outside and play.